Welcome to another episode of Keep Stirring the Sauce podcast. I'm your host, Ronnie, and today's guest is someone who truly embodies the phrase leading with purpose and heritage. She's also the daughter of Italian immigrants, the first woman in her family to attend college, and someone who has turned heritage into leadership, a cultural connector who builds community wherever she goes, and the current chair of the National Organization of Italian American Women. Pat, thank you so much for joining today.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. And thank you for that lovely intro. I'm going to remember that. Cultural connector. I like that.
Right. I'm so excited to have you on the show tonight. We've been planning this for a while, and we were introduced by a mutual friend. But you, Pat, you wear many hats. Can you give us a little bit of background about you and who you are and growing up Italian?
All right. Thank you. Well, starts way back in Brooklyn many years ago. I won't give you the exact time. But I was the fifth child born to Italian immigrants from the Abruzzo region of Italy. My parents were actually born in the same small little town of Villa Santa Maria in the provincia di Chieti in Abruzzo. People know there it's between Pescara and the Apennine Mountains. And ironically, the villa is known as the village of chefs because the patron saint of chefs, San Francesco Carocciolo, was a cardinal there, and I think he was basically exiled to this rural area, Abruzzo, in between the different papacy fights back in the 1500s, and he became well renowned for his cuisine and his culture, and he used to cook for the principalities, and the area became known for cooking for the Prince of Naples, and then at one point I think my grandfather, who was a chef, cooked for the Vera the Stroganoff, the Russian princess.
Oh my gosh!
It's a long history. And my grandfather and his two brothers wound up coming to the north end of Boston in 21, and starting their own Italian restaurant called the European, which lasted for like 60 years. And anyways, my family migrated sort of to New York, and I was, again, my parents, he came over in 1931 during the Depression, raised 4 adult children, and somehow I was a surprise 23 years into their marriage of the fifth. So, of course, I had to do things differently, and one of the things I wanted to do is I went to an independent women's college, let alone the fact that I was going to college was quite a shock.
Yeah.
The women usually stayed closer to the home. And I was very fortunate to get into Barnard at Columbia, and I just was introduced to a different type of Italian culture. I mean, where I grew up in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, it was very a blue collar ethnic neighborhood. They use either Italian Roman Catholics or Eastern European Jews, descendants and stuff. Working class, and then I was exposed to this different world at the university, and Italian culture was a whole different level, and I minored in Italian and studied the Casa Italiana under some famous professors, and I just fell in love with, I heard the language growing up, but nobody in my family except my parents spoke Italian. My brothers and sisters never learned it, and I was motivated to go, and I studied at the Università per Stranieri in Perugia, and then I came back and I tried to always combine my love of Italy, the Italian culture, my heritage, with my skills in writing and community organizing, and I worked in a number of different government relations jobs, and eventually joined NOIAW when I moved to Connecticut, and there was a region there, and I found I needed to connect back to my roots, and my mom was gone, my dad was gone, and I was looking for a group that could help me reconnect with my roots, but also in a different way. I had started my own book club, the Libri Imperativi, about a good read based on to whet your literary appetite, and combine it with a fine aperitivo from a region to learn more about it. And that's how we explored different regions of Italy. And we had Cape in Conversazione. We spoke Italian every week.
Oh, wow.
And just to promote that connection. So it all goes along with as I started in Connecticut and became more involved in NOIAW there. NOIAW had started in Manhattan on this group in 1980, the history that you can read about on our website, where our founder, Dr. Eileen Miyoto Siri, who was a psychologist studying ethnographics or different ethnic backgrounds, asked Congresswoman then Geraldine Ferraro, who became later on the first woman to run for vice president on a major party, asked if there were any groups dedicated to Italian American women. And she said, no, only the groups where the men make the speeches and women make the coffee. She said, why don't you start one? So Aileen did back in 1980 when it was a different world, not like you can see women today involved in so many things, but she found a
Right.
group of, people like Geraldine, congresswomen, attorneys, judges, TV personalities, actresses, educators who came together to start this group. And they basically were, at that point, they were making sure that women had a seat at the table other than in the dining room. So
I love
that's
that.
my little turn on it. And, they were very successful for a number of years because look to where we've come now, where, we have a very prominent board. We have on our distinguished board, we have the first woman to become Speaker of the House of Congress, Nancy Pelosi. And no matter what your politics are, she was a woman who was able to break that glass ceiling, and she happened to be Italian American. I always say because she's the mother of 5, and she knew how to bring consensus to the table. And kids didn't get a choice. These are your choices, and this is the one I'm going with.
Right.
And then we had other people like Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro from New Haven, Rhode Island, another one of our regions, which has the greatest concentration of any metropolis of Italian Americans. So people think it's, it must be New Jersey, New York, or it's actually Rhode Island that has a great concentration, especially in the New Haven area. And we learned by sharing our common interests and coming together to help each other, support each other, and networking, or having, besides author talks, we had tours of the art gallery in New Haven at Yale had a special exhibition on the 500th anniversary of Leonardo. So women came from 2 hours away to be with other women and to study this art.
Oh,
Or we
wow.
had so things like that. We tried to then we have topics. We found we have 2 trademark annual events. One is in January for the Epiphany, we always used to celebrate 3 wise women instead of 3 wise men. And we have in our different regions women who stand as exemplars of Italian American community, and also they become like mentors or role models for young women who we award scholarships to. And then we also have in October, and during Italian Heritage Month, we call it a tavola, where women gather around the table, which is where we learn all our stories and our cultures and our tradition. We're growing up. That's where I learned, what my grandfather did, or what, my father's.
Yeah.
So we do that. We bring women together on the idea, since we're a national organization, women across the country who are members, we ask them to gather around a table, whether it be in a restaurant in someone's home or in a other, public institution, to just start that conversation and how they connect through their heritage and how they're going to pass it on to the next generation.
Oh, that's so important.
So that's 2, at opposite ends of the year, what things that we try to do, and just to help promote or advance our mission, I call it to educate, engage, and empower Italian American women through their shared culture and heritage. And we welcome people who are not Italian American, but who have a passion for the same things, who want to learn more about Italian art history or science or, medicine. And look what happened last year. Italy is the only country in the world that has more UNESCO sites than any other country, the small country that it is. And last week, what was the latest UNESCO Heritage Award? It was to the cuisine of Italy.
Wasn't that was exciting. I was super excited about that.
Right. Yeah. So this is just sort of going back from my beginning to where the organization has come, and we're hoping to see it keep growing. We have 45 years of history, and we're hoping to continue the next generation to connect those and start again. We're going to revitalize our mentorship program, our networking, and hopefully we used to have an exchange program with young students. We send to Italy, and then Italy would send students back, but the government changed a lot of regulations, so we're still working on that.
Oh, wow.
We're trying to offer.
That's beautiful. That's amazing. I love that you guys put this together. And I had heard of it, but it wasn't until I was, talking to Katie, and she started telling me about this amazing organization. I was like, wait a minute, like I need to find out more about this. Like, it's wonderful the stories that are being shared and told, and everyone's story is different, but we all have that same connection, which is amazing. And Italian culture obviously plays a huge role in your life, in your work. What did growing up Italian American teach you about community when you were growing up versus what we have now?
Well, there's always room at the table for one more and to hear their story and how you can support them. Because, my parents were, as I said, again, Italian immigrants, but they had, neighbors and friends from different backgrounds. And, when they fell in hard times, they always, knew that they could come back to my parents' house. And my mother had a cousin who lost her husband at a young age, and there was no question she and her young children just moved in. And the seven it became from, I guess, 6 people to like 9, because there was always room. You had, and even if you had differences, when you got to the table, it's just all sort of worked out. And it's those, sometimes people call it, I don't know, the 3 F's of family, food, and faith. And I think of some of the basic values between, not everybody is Christian, but there's a Judeo-Christian also traditions that somehow that we grew up with that brought us together. The communities, I guess, based on many common precepts. And it's always about Italian is ready to share. And I think, in my mind, that's what it is. But because we have so much to share, I mean,
Right.
we're not just vino, pasta, investors, We have,
That's very true.
You look at the history of the art world, the music. I mean, I know a lot of it's people now are studying Italian, not because they're Italian, but because they have careers in music. And the language of a lot of music is written, even from the emotional expressions. If the conductor's telling you to get louder, he's saying forte, right? Or
Right.
piano, soft, or whatever. And the whole, thing, maestro, the leader, the word comes from Italian. And people are studying Italian for that, for opera, for the art world, and of course the cuisine. So you don't have to be Italian to appreciate the culture. And that's really where we're headed, from where we grew up and what we learned. Because think about it, as you get further away from that immigrant experience, the next generation, they're less and less tied to it. And somebody has to keep bringing it back and what it means in today's terms. I think that's what I learned.
That's so very true. Out here, on the West Coast, we have a large population of Italian Americans, and here in Utah, we have a very big group. But it's not as well known as, back east. And when they hear you're Italian, their first thing is like, well, are you from New York? Are you from, and yes, our family's from there, but like it's kind of funny because we don't have all of these big cultural festivals and whatnot. And I would love to see that come to Utah and to the West Coast. But what I like about the organization is that everyone's involved. It doesn't matter where you're at, and you're welcomed. And I think that's really important, especially for the younger generation of women that are being raised and learning these cultures. And I feel like they're really starting to kind of go back to their roots and bring that, I don't want to say old school, but they're bringing that back, which is beautiful.
Right. I guess the old school becomes new school.
Yeah, right. It becomes cool again, I guess.
And I know how you grew up. You have to tell me a little bit about your background too. But when I grew up, polenta was like, it was a poverty dish. It's from the cucina povera because it was cornmeal from Hilton. That's a lot of the Italian areas are based on the agriculture, local farm, and how many people had a garden in the backyard, and it was not just to smell the flowers, but that was where you got most of your sustenance. Right? Your herbs, your plant, your tomatoes, your eggplants, all because people grew their own food, and that was just important. So there's many ways that comes back but it's old school. Now polenta is like a haute cuisine. If you go into a restaurant, they
It's so
order.
true.
I always laugh at that. My mother used to serve this like on Mondays as leftovers.
Yeah, for real. I mean, I remember like we still serve it here at home, but like I remember like stirring forever with my grandpa and, grandma just putting the stew out and there you go. This is dinner. And everybody kind of looks at you and you talk about it. If they're not Italian, they don't understand.
Right, right, yeah, that's great. Where is your family from in Italy? Or your
So
roots?
yeah, so my father's side is from northern Italy. They're from Agordo, and my mother's side is from southern Italy. So they're more like Calabria and Sicily. So I come from two different ends of the world. But yeah, my grandparents immigrated here to New York, and my grandfather lived in Newark for a while and then came here to work in the mines.
Right.
And he became an accountant and did all that. But yeah, like that's how my family came to Utah. But we would go back and spend the summers in New York, and it was wonderful. But I haven't been back in a really long time.
Oh, so you grew up in Utah, I guess.
Yep. So I grew up in Utah. Yep.
That's, and how is it? How do you find the difference from what your family brought from New York to what you find? Even I don't know if there an indigenous Italian community in Utah that's been there for a long time.
There is, yeah. There's a huge population. Many immigrated to come work in the mines. A lot of them from southern Italy. So yeah, they were all like really very, very close in their communities. So in the mines here, we had, what they called like Highland Boy. And so you would have like the Japanese were living in one area, the Italians, the Polish, and they all just kind of like worked together, but they had their own little communities. And then as the mines grew, they started building housing for the miners, and that community stayed like very close. Like it was community nights and events, and they were, attending mass together on Sunday. So a lot of like our grandparents, close friends and family that came over, it's just grown. Like the community has just grown. So like our daughter went to Catholic school, and I would run into somebody and they're like, "Oh, now wait, what's your last name?" And that's, they just embrace you like, "Oh yeah, okay, my grandmother knew your grandmother and I knew your dad or your mom." But the community is huge, especially with the Italian American Civic League here. They put on a lot of big events. I mean, you met Nick, and his family is very, very involved, and he's a wonderful community leader here in Utah. So he brings everybody together, and you think it's old school, but it's really like this generation that's still bringing in a lot of younger families and families that kind of lost that connection, because parents have passed or grandparents have passed, and they're finding that connection again, which is awesome.
Right. And I think what we have learned from our sociology experts in our group and whatever, and that Italians, or most women anyway, when they're busy starting their career and working, they're not so much interested in joining a group or an organization that like NOIAW, whatever. They think until all the time they find themselves starting their own family, and then it becomes to know what were your grandparents do, what did your grandparents do, what do you pass on, and then they look back, and now it's great that we have organizations like your Italian Civic League and NOIAW in different areas being able to help them fill in those gaps, especially when the older generation has passed on. So it's become more relevant in many ways, I guess.
Very much so.
America is changing, as a country from, originally. My great niece, her mother was a DAR, right, daughter of the American Revolution. So when you start blending the generations, and then you find it, it's, although America's a country in many ways of immigrants, it's changing more and more. So that hyphen between, your nationality and your ethnicity begins to have some more value. but also with NOIAW, we started on the East Coast because there was this concentration where people were. We started it in New York, and then they decided they met other people at conferences, whatever, and they had these physical regions where people would get together and have some of our programs. So Rhode Island, Connecticut, Greater New York, which included technically parts of New Jersey and or the suburbs of New York, and then Greater Washington D.C., which is Maryland and Virginia, besides the district. And then as we get involved with more groups, you learn about these different concentrations. So we were really, I guess I'm trying to remember when I first met Katie. And I don't know if it was on Italian American Leadership group or we both have a connection to the first woman rabbi in Italy. It was originally, she was born in Pittsburgh, but her parents are from Calabria, and so she went back and revived a congregation in Calabria, Italy. And I think Katie, I have some connections with her. We've done programs with her. So and when Katie said, "Oh, I'm in Utah," I was sort of taken aback because I never thought about it, as you said.
Yeah.
Where these other, you expected to go to New Jersey, you're going to find pizzerias, right?
Exactly.
Right, and where the pizza is best. So we're now having a fight on the East Coast between New Haven and I think it's New Jersey, whatever. But it's great to know about these new communities, not new to us, but that they have long established roots, and it's so important. Like I actually have my nephew's son took a job out in Utah, and he stayed in that local woman. They're living there, so I know we're populating some Italian. They just had a child, so we're bringing in another generation of our family up in Utah. But like this connection where you're going out there, and I always tell my other nephew's son lives in Ohio, which is a very big Ohio population. And then getting connected again through it's really a lot of it comes between the labor forces where I guess with these pockets of Italians grew up. And so one of our board members, Adriana Trigiani, who's a famous author, and she's a filmmaker, and she's become a Cavaliere Italian government. She grew up in Big Stone Gap, West Virginia.
Wow.
Again, another place where you wouldn't really think about it's finding Italian populations, but they were all again, miners and people who came out there, and the seamstresses, and again, a lot of their connections grew up around the church. So I guess the Italians went to one church or whatever. So and she's written a book about growing up in Big Stone Gap, and this turns into a movie. But there are, this is what the thing you see and you're amazed. You think, well, I grew up in New York City, or in Brooklyn. You think, it's the center of the universe. It's such a sophisticated. Then I go out to the university. I meet people that I would never have met before, and then from you'll remember people in the Midwest. There's a big population in St. Louis of Italians, and when we have our annual meeting and people sign in virtually now, I love this. I see people come on in Kansas City, people in Utah, San Francisco. You more think about, but some places that different pockets in Florida. So what we decide to do, where we can't be there physically so much, we don't have a leadership group or whatever, but we've extended these ideas of having an ambassador, so Katie in Utah took on that role and educating us back on the East Coast about what's going there, and introducing us to Nick, the the honorary consul general, to to tie these communities together and see we have so much in common, even though we're again miles apart.
Yeah.
So it's become an important new mission of ours to try to keep that national in our name, so we're not just talking to our little bubble of the East Coast.
Which I love. And the virtual meetings are fantastic, and they're informative, and you're getting to meet these amazing women, which was, I was so happy after I left that virtual meeting. I was like, this was the neatest thing. And these women are just, like you said, you wouldn't normally be in the same room or meet them or know them. But it's so great that you guys do that and involve everyone, which is fantastic.
Yes, thank you. And that was amazing too. You helped provide information to our founding member about. She always heard about, I guess, an uncle or a cousin who was at an internment camp in
Yeah.
Utah during World War II. Yeah, and so I was talking to someone. Oh, actually, I spoke to these two women who produced this film called The Italians. It's a sort of a, I don't know, rom-com, I think, thing that it's out now on streaming. But they were talking about meeting in different communities. And when I told them about Utah, they were so excited about this community. And I mentioned the internment camp. And they said, well, how did that come about? And I couldn't remember what you said, if they were actually prisoners of war.
They
Who
were.
were Italian. Yeah. And how did they wind up in Italy, in Utah?
Yeah,
in America, right?
yeah, they had transferred him over here. There was two different camps, and they had him at, it's called Fort Douglas, and it's now where like the University of Utah sits. And they have still the cemetery there, and there are the prisoners of war. There's German, Italian, I want to say there's Japanese as well. But they were brought here to work, and they were shipped up to like Ogden and different rural areas here in Utah. And, you know, they were the kindest people and welcomed into the community. The other, you know, our local Italian Americans, like we're having Sunday dinners with them and inviting them to like Christmas and that kind of stuff. They did have, you know, I can't imagine being separated from your family and your loved ones. A lot of them did go back to Italy after the war, but I know that there was like 33 of them that died here, and you know, they're still celebrated, and their graves are decorated at Christmas and on Memorial Day. But yeah, it's a big part of Utah history, and kind of a dark and sad one. But once you start hearing the stories, it's just amazing. They have an archive at the University of Utah of like verbal stories that people were sharing growing up and remembering. And they're just amazing to listen to. So I was happy to share that information with Aileen.
Okay, great. And so I guess the film producers were interested in learning more about it. So I will connect the two of you again. So because it's amazing, some of the things that I learned. My mother came to this country when she was 17 or whatever, I think. Well, my father's a new bride and had to teach herself the language and raised 4 kids right away during the Depression. So she didn't get much information those days. What was her parents and her twin siblings were back in Italy, and during the war, they got very little information. And I found out, my mom died in 2004. In 2014, my son was asking me questions about what was the story. My mother always used to tell that near the end of World War II, when the Nazis were retreating through Italy, they came up from the south. They went through Abruzzo, and they took over my grandfather. He had this little hotel, which was probably a bed and breakfast in today's terms. And they took over his hotel, and they stationed, because he was the best chef, and he had a cook for them. So now he was cooking for these Nazis and Germans. And when the Italians men were coming back from war because they had surrendered, they were now considered traitors to the Axis, I guess the German Italy Axis, and they were rounding them up. So my uncle was coming back, and I said, "No, you can't come back home because the Nazis are in the hotel. You have to go hide in the woods." And that was the only story she knew. And that years later, he had some blood cancer, and she said, "Oh, that's because the years he spent hiding out in the woods while the Nazis were there." And that was the only story we knew.
Oh, wow.
My son started asking me these questions in 2014. He took an internship with the Israel lacrosse team, and he was teaching lacrosse in Israel. I went to visit the Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum there, and he said he wanted to find out more about the town, what during the war and how the Nazis came through. I asked my cousin what was, and it turns out that not only was my grandfather feeding the Nazis in the hotel, they were hiding Jews in the town because they had been sent there from the north.
Really?
Dispersed a lot of the Italian Jewish, I guess, detainees. And he's trying to get rid of the Jewish problem. So he sent them to rural areas, and they wound up in these internment camps in Abruzzo, and there's some in like parts of I think Campania, Naples, I don't know, Calabria maybe. but because and actually they were, because there was also a concentration camp in Calabria.
Oh,
Nobody knew
wow.
about it because the internment camps in these areas were not barbed wired, what you'd see in the history books years ago. They were
Yeah.
just like, they were told to go there and report to the police. So they would go to a little small Italian town. They were like boarding, and they would just work the, like you said, they came and they had Sunday dinner. They were eating with the locals because they were, you took care of your brother, right? Or
Yeah,
your sister. That was
100%.
the thing, right? They showed up. My grandfather had at his table, Jews, political prisoners, whatever. This, and then all of a sudden the Nazis showed up and they had to go into hiding. And we never found out till later, I guess because you didn't speak about it, a fear of death, right? Basically
Right.
found out
Absolutely.
the town hid 27 Jews, and the mayor became a righteous Gentile because one of the women was 14 when she was hiding there. Years later, when she
Oh,
went back and figured it all out, she wrote to the Holocaust Museum, telling about what went on in this little town, Villa Santa Maria in
oh
Abruzzo,
my
and
gosh.
was trying. And we just found this out by accident,
Oh,
like
I love
10
that
years
though.
ago, because my mother never knew this, and it was to me a part of it was so sad that she didn't know
Right?
all that the heroics that her father was doing, beside and why her brother was really hiding out, because nobody wanted to betray what was happening, how they were
Right.
helping the Jewish family. So there's a whole other side, and Italy
Wow.
was on the wrong side of the war in many places, but then there were the local Italians who didn't care, about what your religion was or where you came from. You
Right?
were just, family. So it's always
Oh,
been part of that.
I love that. And I love that you found all of this information out.
And I'm trying to still get some documentation about what my grandfather did, because maybe I could still get his name added, in the history of the Holocaust Museum. But there's nobody. It's 80 years ago now, so it's hard
Right?
to get factual verification of some of this. I'm working on
Definitely.
that too.
Well, and it's funny because, like you said, like a lot of people they didn't talk about a lot of things. They were very like to themselves with a lot of things. But then again, finding out this
Right.
history and like, oh my gosh, like sharing that it's powerful and it's amazing. That's why I totally got into podcasting and sharing, the local
Right.
stories and then
Yeah.
branching out and hearing everybody else's stories because everybody has a story and I want to share that because
Right.
it's beautiful.
Right, and that's what we do around the table, right, with these American women. But again, I so appreciate people like you who make the time and want to delve into it and find out and report that, back to us, or just share those stories that in another 2 years no one will be around to tell of that generation. So for the couple of years.
Oh, thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Well, I could talk to you for hours. It's just, I
Yeah.
can, and pick your brain. You're just fascinating and just such a lovely woman. But I want to
Thank you.
share, how, if people that are listening want to be
Mhm.
involved with NOIAW, like how can they sign up and what are some of the first steps they should take to join and be engaged? Can you share some of that?
Sure, and I don't know how far our audience is reaching here, but the easiest way is to go to our website. So it's noyaw.org. So it's our initials: N from national, O from organization, um, I from Italian, and A from American, and W for women. So it's noyaw.org. Sometimes we say noia, but that's in Italian means boring or restless, and I think we're anything but that. But, so those boring Italian women, you can find them on our website, and there's an application you can fill out. And it's not, I mean, almost anybody who has a passion for Italian uh, language, culture, history. You don't have to prove your Italian descent, but the fact that you share these common interests, as and we do accept men too. The annual membership fee now is $150 for people over. Excuse me. We don't. You have to be at least 18.
Hmm.
And then over 60, there's a senior citizen discount. And we have some discounts in between for, I think, young professionals or students. And we're reaching out. Of course, we know that, it may not be easy to connect with us so much from the distance, so we can arrange. we're more interested in making friends and friend raising than fundraising, although, it helps us to pay our office bills and our staff. We have 1.5 staff members because neither one is full time. But but what they do is they do the communications and reach out and help us connect. Make these Zoom meetings, and they do our newsletter so we can keep people informed. It's all electronic right now. Because the print costs would be too much. We have right now we have like over 600 paid members, but we have a mailing list of people of interest of a couple of thousand. And we reach a phone network, I said, across the country, and we have some members, of course, in Italy, and we have some in Argentina and Australia. That's the first place to start. Or you can call up the office if you'd rather do that. I can leave the phone number, 212-642-2003 is our main line. And if you can't get online to join or whatever, you can always call that number and they'll give you your information, and you can send a check or however it's convenient for you to pay. But also, you can join our events without being members, but we just hope that you'll find ways to support us because it helps us reach more women, and it helps us support programs where we raise money for scholarships every year. Last year we gave out 4 scholarships to deserving women of, usually one of the requirements is Italian American descent, but it's also some people who are going to, women who is looking to perpetuate the connection with Italian language or heritage or, the culture. And there's a criteria to follow up. I think that'll be on the updated criteria will be on our website soon for those interested in the scholarships.
Oh, amazing.
And then hopefully we'll get a mentorship program going where we can connect people like you, Ronnie, people, who are coming out of college or young women trying to start their career and looking in podcasting or broadcasting or, or even, doing research. You have a lot to add to that. And we're hoping to just expand on that work that way and be available to those who really care about learning more or connecting with other Italian American women.
Oh, I love the mentorship program idea. That's fantastic.
Right. Yes, we have a couple of judges on our board, and one has volunteered. If she does this, to bring them into her courtroom to observe or to learn or to help, help them figure out if they want to go to law school,
Oh, wow.
give advice like that. Yeah, so we're hoping that, and it's not just lawyers. We have, doctors, educators, a lot of professors, and hopefully you can find ways to connect people with internships, that'll help them get on to the next step along their journey of discovering who they are and what they want to do.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, with some of your events that are held back east, is anyone welcome to come to those, like members welcome to come to those at any time?
Sure. Yeah, yes, if you're we're trying to do, mix up a few virtual programs in between so more people can come participate. But yes, anyone, you don't have to live in a certain place or be an official member. You're always welcome to come like a couple of meetings and meet everyone and see if it's the right fit before you want to actually, join. It's not a strict requirement, but we just want to make that connection.
Oh, that's amazing and so welcoming. Like most Italian women, right? Like we embrace everybody.
Right.
I love that. Well, and you guys have a fun virtual event coming up here shortly, right?
Yes, on January 6th, we have the stories of La Befana, and that's La Befana. The legend goes she was, I guess a lot of people refer to her as a witch or a good witch.
Yeah, right.
But she's what now in the last, I don't know how many years, she becomes like the woman who brings the gifts on Epiphany, or what in the United States people have called a little Christmas on January 6th, because that's the day that the 3 magi reached the manger and brought the baby Jesus gifts, right?
Right.
Not practical, because what baby needs frankincense, but so we have our wise women. We actually have them we talk about the gifts that they bring to the world with their, as education. And if they were, or if the three wise women showed up today, they would have showed up on time. They would stop to ask directions. And they would clean the stable and cook, but
It's
this was
hilarious.
one of the parodies. But the event that we're going to have virtually is focusing on Bafana's table. This one of our members, Dina Gregory, who does TED Talks, an educator. She found that during COVID, she became the voice of the puppet of La Bafana, and she went out into the community, talking to people and bringing them connection when you couldn't really make physical connection during that time. She'd say one cookie at a time. The puppet would offer children cookies.
Oh,
But she started collecting all these stories, and she got into researching and finding the healing powers. What does La Bafana really mean? What's the message of Epiphany? Why do we celebrate, the 12 days of Christmas, which end on January 6th? It's how we celebrate basically the traditions and the values of
yeah.
our life. And so she does it around La Bafana's table. And this year she's invited NOIAW women, or anybody's interested, she's going to pick one woman storyteller for each of the 12 days, and they're going to do a virtual presentation on January 6th. And we have a sign up on our website for that, if anybody's interested.
That's amazing. And I'll share that on our Instagram as well, because
Yeah.
it looks like a fantastic event. I'm excited to do that one.
Oh, great. Thank you. And if you have a story to contribute, send it in.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe you'll find a seat at La Bafana's table.
Right? That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Pat, I so appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and to be on the podcast and share your story and, yeah, get the word out about this amazing organization and all the amazing women behind it. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for inviting us and thinking, and again, helping to spread the word about the network. So we really appreciate your efforts on that.